I just got back from a week in the Philippines along with Junior and Larry, and we gave, I don't know, about 8 talks or something. And the people were amazing. I mean, I think all 3 of us were quite struck about, as a culture, it was just, I've never seen anything like it. People so generous, so kind, so welcoming, so hospitable. But the main thing was they kind of loved being loving. They let love live through them. And it's extraordinary to watch. And they seem to have this understanding that people are not problems to fix, but persons to love. And I thought that was kind of remarkable for an entire culture to kind of really live that way. And it reminds me of this place. So I remember a number of years ago, earlier headquarters at 1960 East 1st Street, I was sitting at my desk and I could look out into the floor of the well, and there's a reception desk, and in walks this guy Magoo. And he had just gotten out of prison after 10 years. This is the first time he'd ever stepped foot in Homeboy. And I'll admit something, my heart sank as soon as I saw him, and I'm not proud of this. Let's just say he and I never kind of had a good relationship. I mean, like, I first met him when he was 15 years old, and he was doing community service hours at the Lord's Mission Church. And I remember I asked him to do something. He got in my mascara and he said, "I don't have to do what you say." And cut to a few years later, I'm preaching at the funeral mass of his homeboy Hector, and I'm standing there in between all the pews, and I'm preaching, and I'm saying, if you want to honor Hector's memory, then you'll work for peace and you'll love your enemies. As soon as I said that, he stood up in where we was sitting in the middle of the church. He came down the center aisle and he got my grill and mad dogged my ass, and he walked out of the church. I go, wow. Cut to number 3-4 years later, I'm patrolling the projects at night on my bike, and I'm in one part of the projects, and I see una bola of homies, and they're kind of in a circle. Obviously somebody's fighting in the middle of the circle. So I throw my bike down, I go through the group, and I break up this fight. It's between Magoo and this guy named Smiley. And I find out later it's over some female. And, this has not pleased Magoo at all. He reached into the front of his pants and he pulled out a gun and he's kind of brandishing it. And the homies are saying, "Hey, don't disrespect G." And then he points the gun at me and he says, "I'll shoot his ass too." Are you getting a sense of kind of what our relationship was like? So his homeboy Gus was at the reception desk and he intercoms me, "Hey G, Magoo's here. Do you want to see him?" And he knew that it would be in question, and I said, "Well, sure, And he comes in and he does another thing that he's never done before. He gives me a big abrazo. Then he sits down and he says, "Let's just talk man to man. I mean, look, I've never disrespected you." So I think I'm going to go for it. I said, "What about the time you walked out in the middle of my funeral mass for Hector? Or how about the time you pulled a gun out on me?" And he thinks for a second and he goes, "Yeah, but besides that." And then I saw him do another thing he had never done before that I've ever saw. He really laughed. I mean, he laughed from the stomach. And he was just howling, and so was I. When the laughter subsided, he said, "I've spent my entire life building a reputation for myself, and now I regret I even have one." And then he did something I'd never seen before. He really, really cried. He was wailing, he was weeping, and I let him cry. Until finally, the tears subsided and he said, "Now what do I do? I know how to drive, I don't know how to park. I know how to shake fools in prison. I know how to sell drugs on the streets. And I only know how to wash my clothes in the sink of a cell. Now what do I do?" So naturally I hired him. But I learned that day, as we all learn over and over again, that Magoo is not a problem to be solved, but a person to be loved. And that's what this place is all about. And Junior and I and Larry had an amazing experience in an entire country that seemed to let love live through them, that they loved being loving. And so I invite you today to just, anybody you don't get along with or who's, difficult, they're not a problem to be solved. They're just a person to be loved, and that will change everything.